Well, welcome everybody. I'm Luke Lambert. I'm President and CEO of Gibbs and Soell, and welcome to the Global Street Fight. We had such a great response to this event last year, the inaugural year of the event. We couldn't resist coming back for year two. I know the title implies that things could get pretty physical here this morning, but I promise you that's not going to be the case. But, you know, we do feel that the title works. It's aggressive. We are operating in an environment that's extremely competitive in a global economy, hyper-competition really, as we like to call it, and it's having an impact certainly on the C-suites. It's having an impact on you as communicators, and it's certainly having an impact on the media that we're all trying to engage with, and we have some representatives here today as well. So we're here to discuss the impact on all three. And I have the privilege of kickstarting the event by having a discussion with Jimmy. There's Jimmy Soni, Managing Editor of Huffington Post, and with Mark Howard, who's the Chief Revenue Officer at Forbes Media. So I look forward to that. Fortunately for you, I'm going to have a great discussion with them. You're going to have an opportunity to ask some questions as well. Ask questions about what lies ahead for their businesses. They've been seeing some dynamic change. But we can also talk about how, as professional communicators, you can leverage all this change that's going on so you can build deeper relationships, much stronger relationships with stakeholders as well. So that's a big part of this as well. Before we jump in, I wanted to offer a couple observations that I think might help stir some additional discussion and debate throughout the morning. Some of you may have heard or seen some recent Pew Research, this year's, actually the 2014 State of the News Media report for Pew, talked about something we haven't seen for some time. It talked about a renewed level of energy in the news industry. And I quote it, they also talked about, quote unquote, real optimism about the industry. Who would have thought? I mean, for those of us that have been at events like this over the past couple of years anyway, who would have thunk it? So we're gonna explore some of that. Couple highlights from the report. They talk a lot, as you can imagine, about digital players in the news industry and their growing news staffs in particular. One call out cited 5,000 full-time professional jobs at digital news outlets, most of which were created in just about the last 5 years or so. They talk about entrepreneurs like, I'm just going to name one, who we all know, Jeff Bezos, who has pumped money into this industry, capital into the industry, and the report cites that it seems to be having a positive effect, and we're going to see more of that potentially. A lot of us questioned those kinds of moves when they first started happening, you remember? You know, as timing would have it, when I read that about Bezos and other entrepreneurs, I just happened to last week, I was at a Arthur Page event here in New York, and I saw Catherine Graham Weymouth interviewed. And she too, of the Washington Post, as you know, was very optimistic about the future of the Washington Post. And we wondered, and of course she's in a setting like this, so you have to be optimistic, right? I think fairly, though, where I was impressed is she recognized a lot of, as she put it, hand-wringing that's been going on in the industry. But she also said quite clearly the moaning and the groaning just has to stop. And I liked hearing that. She said that there had to be much more focus on the consumer in the industry today, and that there has to be a better recognition of the real gift that the industry has been offered by the internet. And by that I mean, and she pointed out two things in particular, 24/7 news cycle and also the global reach that's provided. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But there was also a little bit of pride on display, and I'm going to ask our guest to comment on this a little bit later. She pointed out that 80% of quote-unquote new media is getting their news from quote-unquote old media. So Jimmy laughs. All right, good. We're going to get him to comment on that later. So I will be interested in hearing what they have to say. But back to the Pew report, a couple other key trends cited. A lot of conversation about digital news, as you can imagine. The overlap between public relations and news and how it's become much more pronounced. So if that's not clear to you, we're talking about paid content here. And refreshingly, as an industry, we're starting to talk about that a little bit more. as, and I'll define it, many times content written by professional journalists, but paid for by commercial advertisers, right? Let's just call it what it is. But the stunning stat for me anyway, and it's probably not new to Jimmy, certainly to Mark, is that you call it native advertising, call it custom content. Pew says that spending in this area in 2014 could reach $2.85 billion. So not just a fad here, folks. Pew also cites new developments regarding social media, mobile, as you can imagine, that are sure to change the way news is collected, processed, and distributed. On the social media side, one percentage that they threw out, which I thought was staggering, was that 50% of people on social networks, and we all know who they are, share or repost news today. Probably not. I think it's staggering just because we're talking about reposting and sharing specific news items. But even more important, 46% actually discuss the news that they're reposting as well. So talk about real engagement. Again, not entirely new, but we're still early on in this. So where are those percentages going to go? We'll talk some more about that. Also talked about not ignoring what mobile technology could mean, especially as you look at firsthand eyewitness reporting. Think about what is going on in the Ukraine today. Unfortunately, we're talking about a year ago what happened in Boston. Think about those kind of eyewitness accounts. And yes, not new, but where is that going to go, and how significant can that be in terms of the collection and distribution of news in the future? Pew also cited that 11% of online news consumers, people like us, are now starting to submit their own content. And we're talking about news content here, whether it be videos, photos, articles for publication, et cetera. So the bottom line for me there, the word I like to use to describe all this is this fusion of media coming from multiple sources. Again, a trend we've been seeing, but this is here to stay, and how far is this going to take us? Really interesting to think about. And all this means that is that organizations like Forbes and like Huffington Post really have to employ multiple strategies. You're going to see both these gentlemen and their organizations were early adopters. They knew that one strategy was not going to be enough to capture audience and build revenue for sure, and we're going to talk about that. So you can see I certainly have a ton to talk about with them, don't you think? We've planned, in addition to my discussion with Mark and Jimmy, we planned two other great discussions for you this morning, and I'm going to describe the program ever so briefly. But before I do, I figured you guys owed it to me for a 1-minute. Indulge me for a 1-minute commercial about Gibbs and Soell, just who we are, because I've had a few people ask as well. We're an independent business communications firm. We're headquartered here in New York. We've got offices in Raleigh, Chicago, and Basel, Switzerland. We have a global footprint with offices in over 50 countries through PROI, which is our own independent global affiliate network. When you look at our client experience, you're going to see strengths, heavy strengths in advanced manufacturing, energy, consumer, home, building products, financial services, and also agribusiness and food. Fully integrated service offering, as you might imagine, in terms of communications expertise, but really deep consulting experience in areas like business consulting, sustainability consulting, and employee engagement. That's the commercial. If you have any questions, there are a few other G&S people here today about the agency, feel free to ask. And then why are we doing this? I was asked that while folks were getting coffee. We've held thought leadership programs like this around the country for the past few years. The response has really, really been terrific. So we're going to continue. The themes have always focused on issues that senior communicators, like many of you in this room, strategies you can employ to inspire action within your organization and to reach your stakeholders more effectively. In the past, we've looked at issues like sustainability and social media. Today, again, getting back to the program, we're going to be discussing, again, this environment. We're going to talk about hyper-competition. We're going to talk, again, about how it's affecting the media, most importantly, how it's affecting business leadership, and then we're going to talk about how it's even affecting corporate reputation, which is so critical today as well. So we've got two other sessions. Ron Locke is going to bring up Evan Shapiro from Pivot, and they're going to be talking about a really interesting new breed of television that truly does inspire action. Interestingly, that is part of our mission as an organization, so we applaud that. A television that inspires action and is all about engagement. So we're excited for that. And then after that, Steve Halsey is going to bring back, by popular demand from year one, Robert Frank from Nielsen, and he's going to discuss consumer perceptions of CEOs in this unique dynamic environment. So we're looking forward to that.